In the name of Christ who calls us. Amen. Bob and I have to trade off, putting the extra, the booster, whatever this is, step up and down. He needs it less than I do. So the bad news is, you cannot deserve God's love. The good news is, you cannot deserve God's love. From our readings today, Moses made a serpent of bronze, put it upon a pole, and whenever a serpent bit someone, that person would look at the serpent of bronze and live. For we are what he has made us, created in Christ Jesus for good works, which God has prepared beforehand to be our way of life. For by grace you have been saved through faith. And this is not your own doing, it is the gift of God, not the result of works, so that no one may boast. For those who do what is true come to the light, so that it may be clearly seen that their deeds have been done in God. Very complex relationship between our goodness and God's grace and love, how that all works together. I want to tell you a very old story about Gawain, Sir Gawain, and the Green Knight. And though it may sound like a Shaggy Dog story, I promise there is no pun at the end. So don't get yourself starting to look for it. It's not there. On New Year's Eve, the Knights of the Round Table are gathered round the fire, and into the room strides on a green steed a green knight with a great head and a shining axe. And he says, "I challenge the boldest of you to a duel." And of course, Gawain, the most valiant, steps forward to accept the challenge. And the Green Knight says, "Now this is a game, and here are the rules. I give you the axe and the first swing. And next year on this day, you will offer me the same courtesy." And Gawain, being smart as well as valiant, took the axe and lops off the head of the Green Knight. And it tumbles onto the floor, and Gawain picks it up, and it smiles back at him and says, "See you next year." And the Green Knight takes his head and leaves the room, instructing Gawain to meet him at the Green Chapel, and then disappearing. And of course, Gawain doesn't know where the Green Chapel Green Chapel is. I'm a little punchy, I didn't get much sleep. Gawain doesn't know where the Green Chapel is, but that's another excuse for another whole bunch of adventures. But suffice to say that Christmas Eve, he is lost in the woods and full of despair and ready to give up his quest. He has to reach the Green Chapel by New Year's Eve, and he has no idea where he is. And he falls to his knees and prays for a sign, and of course there's a light in the distance through the trees. And he follows the light, and lo and behold, there's this enormous, wonderful, gracious castle. And the Lord of the castle welcomes him in and makes him at home and vets him and feeds him and cares for him after all of his trials through the beautiful Christmas season. And as the new year approaches, having feasted for days on end, the lord of the castle says, I must go hunting. And Gawain says, oh, great, I'll be right there. You know, Gawain's always a man of action, wanting to help. And the lord of the castle says, no, you stay. You need to save up all your strength for this fight with the Green Knight, right? You rest up. We've been reveling for days now. You get your rest. All I ask of you is that you return to me anything you receive while I'm away on my trip. And Gawain says, easy enough. So, Lord takes off on his hunting trip, and no sooner has he exited than the lovely wife enters Gawain's chamber and speaks of love. And Gawain, being absolutely gracious and determined to never put a lady to shame, nevertheless manages to keep her at bay for the entire day, at the end of which she says, well, at least let me give you a kiss. And when the lord of the manor returns that evening with the meat, Gawain gives him a kiss. And the next day, this is the shaggy dog story, the same thing happens. She comes to him, and when the lord of the manor returns, he gives the lord of the manor 2 kisses. And the last day is the 30th of January, the day before Gawain is to go to his death, and she says, oh, surely you'll receive my affections today. And he says, no. And she says, well, then take from me this trinket and carry it as a token of my love for you. And she takes off this green belt and hands it to him, and she says, this belt is enchanted. The one who wears this belt cannot be slain. So that night when the lord of the manor returns, he gives the lord of the manor 3 kisses, but not the belt. He even goes and says his confession, because Gawain is a profoundly Christian knight, in which he mentions all sorts of crimes and misdemeanors, but not the belt. And the next day, he sets off for the Green Chapel, which, of course, the lord of the manor knows where it is and how to get there, and sends him on his way. And as he approaches, he hears the sound of an axe being whetted on the stone. And when he enters the glade before the Green Chapel, there's the Green Knight, bigger than ever, greener than ever, with his shining axe. And he raises the axe to the sky, and Gawain bares his neck and prepares, hoping that this belt works. And the axe comes down and slices a little piece off the back of Gawain's neck so that the blood drips to the ground in the snow. And Gawain knows that he had been saved not by magic, but mercy. And he is filled with shame. And when he looks up, he sees not a green knight, but the lord of the castle. And then his shame explodes into weeping and gnashing of teeth, and he is filled with remorse, for he has betrayed the lord of the castle, who has chosen to show him mercy. And he says, I will wear this belt always as a sign of my unworthiness. And the lord of the castle says to him, did you think I was seeking a perfect champion? wear that belt instead as a sign that the one who made you and made the flowers to bloom in spring and causes the flower to fade and the seed to fall into the ground and grow, grants you the grace and strength you need. Your strength does not lie in your perfection, but in this gift of self-knowledge. We want God's love to be something that we earn until we have the self-knowledge to know that we can't do it. And that changes everything. And when we understand that about ourselves, when we begin to let forgiveness and grace in, then we actually have the power to be God's flawed champions. These are the champions God seeks. Flawed people, like all of us, who with a modicum of humility accept God's grace and work to extend it to others. In the early hours of this morning, a flawed champion offered his body that 3 people may live. Those people receiving his organs, probably as we're speaking. Maybe coming out of recovery now. When I think about Mike, I see that grace in operation. Someone who understood his own limits and yet loved so generously. And whom God, by God's grace, has made a blessing to others, even in his death. Amen.